Good
morning.
Those were the best minutes I've seen in a while.
Thank you. I call to order this meeting, and I had it upside down here at Wood. This meeting of the Northport Village Corporation Board of Overseers. It's October 13th, Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day weekend. Thank you all for being here. We actually have a good congregation. I appreciate it. And with Michael Terrell on the phone, I believe everybody is here, which is good. Just a reminder that we are now on a 9 a.m. schedule, which continues through May of next year. June, July, August, September is when we move to 8 a.m. meetings.
And John, as to that, when you do the agendas, which is so great to do, make sure you read the top, because the one you posted did say 8.
The one that's in the village says 8, the one that was posted on Dan's thing says 9, that's because I forget.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dan reminded me and I quickly fixed it for Dan. So let's see, we have a few items to go through. We first need to approve the minutes of the September 15th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So,
Second.
Judy and Jeffrey, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Michael, I assume that's unanimous, thank you.
No, I'm gonna stay. I wasn't here, sorry.
Abstain from,
I mean, they look good. They are really good. I have to agree with Steve. They look really good, but I
Yeah.
I don't know content.
Got it. Are there any questions or issues from Bayside residents or meeting attendees? Beanie?
No. Did you get my wife's letter?
I did. I received a letter from Lisa regarding the pernicious brown-tailed moth situation. The communications committee has sent around some links on that. Lori's request was that the overseers take a proactive stance on brown-tailed moth and not wait until next year to see what happens. This is a complicated issue. I had Timbercliff come by the other day and he said he's hearing that the brown-tailed moths are supposed to move north and west away from here in the next year. Steve?
Just what Lori was talking about was, it's great to take care of brown-tailed moths on our property, but the village has brown-tailed moths everywhere on village property.
Right.
And the residents aren't going to take care of that. So the proactive piece was, should we spend some money having some people who have tools to get up in the trees to remove those nests in general?
Vicki?
This came up last summer. I do not think that the village has the budget to handle that sort of work where you go. And that said, I'd like to suggest that the village try to do something about black flies in Maine. You know, there are just too many of them. And I think the best we can do is take care of our area. They will run their course. Because it was so wet last spring, they expect that next year might not be as bad, although we're not sure if this year was the peak year for the mid-coast area, but it sort of felt like it. And so that's the information that we had, and some of that comes from the state. When the tree committee had Jan Santier, who's from whatever the department is, the tree people for the state. It's an immense undertaking. Do you know how many trees we have? The tree committee's been dealing with that, so I understand the request, but we look into inoculation. Right now there's inoculation. Apparently there's rumblings that there might be something about spraying. The tree committee chairman will bring that up in there. In her report, we talked about it yesterday at our meeting. We're not sure if there is a spray, and do we want to spray chemicals in our village? So, anybody else have anything to say about it?
well, I'll say that Hartswell has been dealing with the brown-tailed moths for 9 years, and each year they're told that this will be the last year. And I agree wholeheartedly with Vicki that we have very limited resources. And while I suffered from them horribly this summer, we have just too much on our plate.
Steve?
Yeah, just two things. It will always be about money, I understand that. The whole brown-tailed moth thing has been prevalent all of southern Maine below Hartsville for the same length of time. It is no better. So what's happened is they just continue to migrate as pests do. So we will probably have them for the foreseeable future.
Any further discussion? I'm happy to send a letter back to Lori and
I should appreciate it, all everyone, like,
I do have, I would have a discussion with my personal physician, you're talking emerald ash borers and brown-tailed moths, and they found a mixture of chemicals that you can buy over the counter at your pharmacy for the rash that comes with brown-tailed moths. So I brought copies, so perhaps you can share this with your friends, neighbors, for those, there, different people
Witch
have
hazel.
different, yeah, it is. It's a
It's
witch
posted
hazel.
in there now.
Is that it? Is
Yeah.
that-
It's posted on the wall there.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
okay.
And it does.
Oh, yeah, well, apparently it's very successful, and different people have different reactions, so
They
I
don't
didn't know it was
follow
already posted in there.
Anything else?
I don't think it says keep in fridge things.
Any other questions or issues from Bayside residents or meeting attendees? Hearing none, we're going to move on to committee reports. I'm going to note that there was a request, I think it was from Miles, a meeting or two ago, that we encourage committee chairs when relevant and when necessary to submit reports in advance of these meetings to the overseers to have a look at, so that at the meeting itself, they don't need to necessarily go soup to nuts through every detail of the report. Now, a couple of the committees have done this for today's meeting, and this may indeed increase in the future. I will note that since these proceedings are also videotaped, I don't think it's sufficient for a committee chair to say, and it's in my report, just look at my report. Because people who are watching this on, I will attach these reports to the minutes. Nonetheless, there are people who are watching on video who will not be able to see them. And so I would ask committee chairs, even if they have a report, be it 1 page or 10 pages long, to at least make reference to it and give us the highlights of it, so the people who are watching on video understand it just. Okay? Jeffrey?
As committee chairs, are we all getting our minutes to Dan Webster Post? Because that's very helpful that they're out there.
I'm concerned only about that with the minutes of the meeting. They'll go out to Dan when these full ones go out, yes.
if you wish to distribute those, I suggest you do it through the communications committee. That way we have consistency.
Okay.
And we know if we are not sending them, we're sure we've got the right copies, all that fun stuff.
And maybe I can gather all of them and have one posted.
Who's on the communications?
I am the
You are?
Well,
Me,
that's,
myself, and
well, that's,
So far, she's doing great.
yeah, but think about that, because the way we, it's been casual thus far, which is getting minutes in advance of the meeting. I think the communications committee has every right to say, any minutes I receive by a certain date will be sent out to everybody. 5 days before the meeting, 7 days, that's to be determined. Nonetheless, I still will include all the full minutes with the full committee meeting notes in the packet that goes out to Dan at the end of each meeting. And that's the first time I think that the public needs to see the committee meetings. Yes.
Yeah, just for clarity, I was not talking about communications doing the pre-meeting distribution. I think what the committee chairs are doing now, what I was talking about, is the communications committee coordinating the effort to get minutes and community reports out to the post-meeting.
I don't think that's an issue. I hear what you're
And
saying.
that's okay, just clarification, because I don't think Lisa needs to be involved in making sure the waterfront report gets here.
Right.
I think that's a poor use of her time.
So I just, sorry to be slow, but I want to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So what I've been doing is when the Waterfront Safety Committee meets, I take minutes after the meeting, I prepare the minutes, share them with the committee, we come to consensus that I've accurately reflected what happened, and then I immediately send them to Dan Webster, who posts them on BaysideMaine.com.
Before the overseers meeting.
Before.
And to the overseers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get them as well.
My opinion, one man's opinion, is that they don't need to go to the public until they have been approved, because this overseers meeting is approving all of the
Okay.
minutes.
Well,
And that I would believe that they don't go out to the public until they have essentially been vetted here and
Okay.
approved here. So if you have a meeting tomorrow
Okay.
It's true, 30 days would wait until they would go out to the public.
And I'm fine with that. I
That's
just
my
wanted- I
opinion.
needed
Okay.
to understand that nuance.
But meeting minute, committees that don't have voting rights don't have to have things approved by the overseers. I just don't want to add extra work for ourselves to approve those.
I'm happy to be the engine through which all these various committee minutes move.
Right, and I think we want to reduce redundancy.
Okay.
We don't, I mean, Dan doesn't need to have 3 different vehicles publishing, minutes in your field. It's just not make a point of view, but of the safety committee, it should be out there once and.
The intent of getting them out ahead of the meeting, as I understood it, was that the overseers would have a chance to look at minutes before the meeting so that committee chairs did not feel obligated to walk through the entire set of minutes. It was for the overseer's benefit, it was not to push it out to the public yet. That's what the original reason is, I thought.
Right, and to emphasize Mike's point, because the committees are not voting bodies, they really ought not to be distributed as an official record until the voting body has said, thank you so much for your work, that's great.
I agree.
Right.
So continue to send them to me as soon as you have them. I collect them, they'll go out.
Thank you.
Lisa, I've just taken the job away from you.
Thank you. Feel free.
All right, let's start though with Lisa and the tree committee.
So I apologize, I don't have the notes ahead of time, we just met yesterday. For the tree committee, the tree inventory has been finished. I've sent it all out to you. So that really is completed. As we add trees, prune trees, if there's problem trees, those new ones will be added to the inventory. But for now, right now, that is where we're at, which is wonderful. And you can see that everything's been tagged and everything's ready. The tree canopy, John Hoy has kindly kind of taken this over. He contacted Project Canopy, and they will be offering grants again this year. We, as a committee, had discussed the best uses of that money, and what we feel right now would be to use that money to buy trees and replace trees, kind of clean up the area that we're at, and then move forward from there. That way, tax money really can be spent on pruning and taking care of what we already have. Okay, let's kind of stretch our budget there. And I'm hoping that Mr. Hoy will be willing to do that, writing that grant and whatnot. If not, we'll find another committee member who will take that over, but he seemed enthusiastic to do that. The memorial trees we looked at, the idea we discussed at the committee, and I think for right now, Vicky's going to kind of take that over. She's going to make a form, and this is with the board approval if you feel this is appropriate. Have someone fill out a form, the memorial they want, placement, the kind of tree they want. They would submit it to the tree committee. After our approval, we would bring it to the board here. It would all be voted upon, agreed upon, and then they could proceed with that. But if in agreement, we feel like that might be the best route, so that we have some handle on where things go and what happens. Again, this goes back to the tree committee, the communications committee. I sent out something about the brown-tailed moth videos on how to handle that best we can naturally. It did get brought up by a committee member of what is the ordinance if people do decide to start spraying things in their yard. What ordinance is there, et cetera, et cetera. And we talked about this at the committee, and I'm bringing it to the board as well. What we had kind of thought is just putting out a statement. Obviously, there's no ordinance, so people can spray what they like on their private trees, but maybe we could put something saying best practice is to hire someone that's licensed or certified, right, to do the application, knowing that our neighbors are very close. And of course, no spraying can be done on public trees. That would have to be something that needs to be brought to the board, and we would be in control of that. And then the last piece really is the whole Arbor Day. Vicky's going to continue to look into the Tree City, identifying Bayside as a Tree City, and we kind of bring that as part of the Arbor Day celebration. We kind of talked about, well, of course, the Arbor Day celebration we would like to pony on with the Safety Day Committee, and we have to get approval from the Safety Committee to do that. And making maybe one big community day, and this might then bring more people. You know, we might have older people, younger people, not just kids, a larger turnout as a community. And we would really like to make it a little bit more purposeful. So perhaps having, we have our safety day activities for the young kids and whatnot, and we have food and the trucks come and whatnot, but kind of pairing that and having educational things for adults and kids regarding that, but then also have an opportunity perhaps that in the morning we have groups of people going and working around Bayside, cleaning up planting areas in public spaces that people could sign up for and whatnot. So having it be really purposeful in taking care of our plantings and our trees and whatnot, and kind of having a celebration around that, kind of tying that into the community. And so that is it for the tree committee.
Any questions for Lisa?
Just a quick clarification, so the memorial tree, you're not asking for us to bless that until we see the little brochure, or do you want us to bless that now?
I think it's been blessed before. It was as an option to the memorial benches.
Yeah.
We just haven't put a protocol and procedure to it, so as part of the tree committee's mission this year is to tighten up on that. So, and nobody's actually come to ask. Every year I've been here up to this point, somebody's mentioned a memorial bench or something. But so that we have an option and also get the information out to the community. And that would be a way of replacing some of our trees, yeah.
Miles?
I'm wondering, is there any reason that the approval needs to come to the board? Couldn't the committee just approve the memorial trees?
I think because of the proximity.
The question was from Miles is whether the request for a tree, memorial tree, need to come to the full board of overseers, or could they be approved by the committee?
Go ahead.
Well, to give the tree committee cover, I think it has to come here. We had a 4-month-old long conversation about where a mulberry tree was placed by the tree warden as part of the tree ordinance, which mandated replacement. And it was a very long and fraught conversation. So I think that we need to know where you're going to put it, because we're going to bless it and we'll take that heat.
Right. And I wasn't part of that 4-month conversation, but I would just say, yeah, because of the proximity and some people's sensitivity to their view and all sorts of things, hopefully we can find areas that are not, and so.
Extreme hypersensitivity to blocking views.
Okay.
Also, I forgot one thing, there's a,
Am I right?
kindly put together a box of information of tree stuff, which is now placed in the office, nice big label on it on top of the file cabinet. Okay?
And it's literature about pruning, about native trees, about what trees to plant, just lots of little information about community trees. If anybody's got any, they can peruse it. If anybody's got any extra time on their hands.
Lisa, the only note I will make is that I am unaware if the town of Northport has any regulations regarding spraying of trees.
Okay.
And so Bayside doesn't, but the state of Maine does, and Northport may. And so there may be overlying regulations that limit people's ability to
Okay,
spray
so
trees.
maybe I can find a link to something like that and say, this line, best practices, public trees must come to ours, and then by the way, here's a link to the spraying information for Maine. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah.
And I would just call over here at Northport and ask them, in case, there may be an
Okay.
ordinance that we're unaware of.
Okay, I will look into that.
And that leads right into the communications report, which you have,
Yeah, so
Right.
very similarly, again, I send out something about the brown-tail moth, some information and 2 videos, how to get rid of that. I will again, as we discussed in the tree committee, I will again do that in the spring to remind people to have a lookout and do what they can on their own properties. And then also just communicated about the new office hours. I've been in touch with Amanda Hickman, and when she has some new information, she's going to send it our way. We will take care of those postings as well regarding the seawall.
and just for those who are watching on video, the information regarding the office hours is the office will only be open Mondays and Fridays from 9 to 12 for the immediate future until we learn otherwise. Bill?
Can we distinguish that all utilities, billing and stuff is only handled on Mondays?
Mondays is for utilities billing only. It only should occur on Mondays.
Because I can't answer a lot of the questions that I get on Friday.
Got it?
Yes, I will communicate that out.
Yes. And that actually should go I believe, to Dan in a separate notice about
Yeah.
office hours and this issue.
Yes.
Vicki?
As far as communication committee, I'm going to take care of Lisa here a little bit. I'm wondering if we can tighten up her job description, because I can see Lisa in her energetic manner taking over everything that has to be communicated, and I'm not sure that that is all the responsibility of the communication person. What I've seen in the past is information about warrants that have to get in the paper. The primary stuff is the legal stuff that the board's required to do as far as communicating to the outside information. And I'm just wondering if maybe Judy can help put some boundaries around that so she doesn't burn herself out.
So Lisa doesn't burn herself out. Judy burned herself out.
A long time ago.
Yeah, the only comment I would add to that is I understand the risk. Once upon a time, we had a communications committee that handled that information, and everything that should go out did go out. We've not done well with that for the last 3 or 4 years. So the benefit of having one person funnel that is they know what needs to go and make sure it happens.
Right, but what I'm suggesting is we come up with a list of what those requirements are, and especially the things that we
The
see every
timelines
year,
and
the
stuff.
timelines that somebody would know, and Lisa can add to it, and then whatever else she chooses to take on, that's fine, but there is a specific.
Could I?
Can you just make a bullet list for next meeting?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, even
Great.
before
That'd
that.
be easy.
Before
Yeah,
that.
even before.
Thank you.
Okay.
Finance Committee, Judy?
I have nothing to report. I know that Steve will be dealing with finance issues. Anything I want to weigh in there, I will.
Thank you. Governance Committee, Judy?
Governance Committee met this morning, so I have no notes. We're focusing at this moment in time on parking, and I want to put a shout out to Elaine Moss, Sandy Hall, Jeffrey Wiltz, Deanna Wolfire, Martha Beezer, Danny Webster, and Gina Cressy, who have all agreed to take on the task of trying to get a handle on our parking issues. And we will be meeting again on November 17th at 8 o'clock here. What we would like the community to do is send a note to me at my email address, which is metcalf442@myfairpoint.net, of your ideas and observations on parking in Bayside. We're trying to do it as a clean slate. How can we make it better? Both from a resident's point of view, a property owner's point of view, and a non-resident's / yacht club point of view. So thank you.
Any questions for Judy on that? Infrastructure, Mr. Lannon?
Yes, we have a contract with the seawall design firm. I've gone back and forth with them multiple times.
Can you speak up, Mike, just so that Michael, since Mr. just move this down?
Yes, I sent a final version of the contract to you, John, and I just awaiting signature on it.
And I only have withheld signature so to give the overseers and the treasurer and finance committee chair any opportunity to weigh in one more time.
Well, I have a question, because one reason why we felt that you shouldn't sign it on the first draft was we felt it was beyond some of the scope beyond what the original vote was. And particularly it was the data mining, the aerial flight services, that we were unsure of its linkage. That's an $8,000 piece of this aerial flight services.
Yes.
So I would like a conversation as to what it's for, if it's necessary, and do we feel comfortable with having that as part of the seawall project?
Okay. The aerial shooting is to take pictures of the park, only the park, and the first row of houses around it associated with it, and then to build the database of all the equipment that we locate in the park during the project. And the reason we're doing one row of houses is so we can build out the database, so we can expand it later for the entire village, but we can put water service on it, we can put park benches, we can have a tree layer, and everything will have like 1 or 2 things in it, and that's it. And then we can take it wherever we want down the road. I know $8,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you're talking about a $1.6 million project and the amount of information we're going to learn as we do this, in conjunction with the new building for the wastewater treatment plant being built there, we're gonna have a lot of electronic data. The last step is what do we do with that? We could take it and we could stick it on hard plans like we usually do and stick them in the files there. And that information can still be used down the road, but it's not what people do with data today. They have it all available so that whenever we do something, not now, but way in the future, and we want to bid it out, we can send those electronic files to the engineering firms that want it as part of the bid packages. This is the background. So if you want to play around with it and figure out what your costs are, we're going to get better costs in the future. We're going to have less change orders. We're going to find stuff in there that we don't know about because, you know, we've done it so many times and it's on plans, but they're on different plans at different times, and we don't know which ones are the ones that are really right. So that's what this will do. To me, it's part of project closeout. It's unfortunate that we do have to fly that. The original one that you gave pause to was going to do, because it costs a certain amount to get them up in the air and to get them started. So we had decided that we would shoot the village and just do this part around the park. But I've shrunk it down now to just the
Yeah,
village.
notice the number was lower.
Yeah, so it's just the village. I'm going to get another cost to do the whole village, not just the so originally they sort of drew the line at the historical district, right? And I thought that, you know, that was not, that seemed reasonable considering you're gonna go up in the air and fly it anyway, and then focus on this. But I get that we wanna keep it to just this project, okay? So that's what we'll do, and then we can have another vote if we want on the differential to go from the village, the park to the whole village. And then, to me, the whole village would be the whole village, because we should have the whole village airily, done airily. Is that a word? Anyway, we should have it all done that way, and then we can decide how much of the layers we build in different areas of the village. Like, you know, for example, along Cross Street, we probably won't build it out the same way we build it out along Main Street.
Understood. Steve, you had a question?
No, just, Mike just answered it. He reduced the scope. I think it's absolutely within the scope of what was approved.
Okay.
Any other questions on this document?
So, assuming this is gonna be approved then, today, then the second thing is Amanda and I met, we have our first update. But the key was, as soon as we got the date this was approved, then I was gonna send out a doodle poll for the infrastructure committee, and we're gonna have a meeting in October, November, and December. So we do need to talk a little bit about timing, okay? So the way this contract's set up is December 1st, we will be getting the final conceptual report. We will finally be down to one alternative on December 1st. So input between now and December 1st will get us to that one alternative. So we're gonna have a meeting in October to kick it off. It'll be a daytime phone meeting. Anybody can join in. I encourage the overseers, if they want to join in, to join in.
Do you have the dates yet for those meetings?
No, because that was triggered off of you when you signed this.
I'll sign it today. So
Yes, and then now I'll send out a doodle poll to the infrastructure committee and the engineers to figure out when we can do it. So we have a newsletter ready to go that Lisa will send out that has the dates in it, once the doodle poll is done.
And do you want the public participating, or are they allowed to in those meetings?
Yes, absolutely.
And so how are they going to learn about when those times are?
In a moment's notice, he will know the date, having done a doodle poll with his,
Yeah, within the
with
next
his
week.
members.
With your committee members, and that will trigger something that Dan can then,
Oh, it's gonna go through Lease. It's gonna be basically from Amanda's, we've already drafted.
just want to make sure the
She
public is
sent
aware
you
of
a copy
those
of it
dates
saying, and remember she had that little highlighted thing that said, if you
Fine.
sign this, we can keep going.
Yeah.
So,
are. I'm signing it as we speak.
that's fine, that's great.
Well, I move that the October 8th, 2019 letter agreement between Malone and Broom be signed by the president of the village. So we can go forward.
Second,
Second it.
any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you will send me the information on when the meeting is, and I will
Yeah,
have Dan
I'm gonna
post
do
it.
the doodle poll with everybody
Yep,
to
okay.
figure that out. So the idea is we're gonna have, so just timing wise, I do wanna get this out there because there's a little bit of a, I don't wanna call it snafu, but I just wanna make sure all the overseers understand. So November, we will have a meeting, so we're gonna do 2 additional data collection steps. They're gonna collect soil borings on the causeway, because we don't have any borings in the causeway. And then they're gonna do a wave study. And the wave study is gonna determine what they think is a reasonable height for the wall. That'll do two things for us. One, it'll give us the reasonable height of the wall, which is what they have. And the second thing is, if we wanna raise it a little bit, we can use it to argue that this is still part of a repair or reconstruction, because we just have to come up this height and so on. So it helps us try to still stay within the, we want a permit by rule.
Right.
So it keeps us allowed to have that discussion with some minor changes. So those are the reasons for doing that. When we have that data, they'll have everything they need to know to do the final conceptual design. So I'm hoping that sometime in November, we get that. Ideally before the meeting, but they don't have an intermediate deadline for that, because it's when they can schedule their crew, weather dependent, blah, blah, blah. Once we have that, we'll have another meeting in November. That'll sort of, this is the expected final thing. Then December 1st, we will get the final design, and we will have a meeting saying this is the final conceptual design that's going forward from final design. We will not have another overseers meeting until January 15th. The final design is due February 1st, so that we can do our bonding. We have to bid it and bond it at that point. So what I would encourage is that I'll send it to all the overseers when we get it, both the minutes from the meetings and then that December 1st thing. And if you have any concerns, voice the concerns early, because otherwise we're going to spend a lot of design dollars and before we vote on it. So the last thing I want to see is anybody have any issues when we come to the January meeting for the vote. Right? Please voice your concerns before that so that they can be addressed and included in that, so that the design team doesn't get too far down the road. Okay?
Good,
Any questions on that?
very helpful.
It's very specific, thank you.
Yeah, the only question I have is, do you have any sense as to when payments are going to be due and the amounts? Or when will we have that information?
Well, there's two parts to this. The first part is the North Ave area, and those payments will be due by the end of the year, right? Because that's the way we arrange that, that's coming out of the reserves, and it has to be done this year. They're gonna take everything to the point of almost bid documents, and then the bidding's gonna be included with the rest of this stuff. Other than that, obviously, the ODC's in here, minus the aerial. The aerial will be done next year, way at the end. Other direct costs. So the other direct costs for the, like the wave study, and that will be due probably in November.
Any idea what amounts?
Yes, it's in here.
Okay, good.
These are upper limit amounts.
And this is the one you sent out to us, that I have a copy of.
Right, so it's
Beautiful.
15, say 15,500 minus 8,000, okay?
Yep.
All right, or actually minus 9,000, so, because they won't have a lot of mileage and printing costs this year.
So the borings, you have that, the wave analysis is 3,500, the borings are 2,500.
Yes.
And then there'll be some incidental costs from the other, for the professional fees.
Right, and then if we look at the tasks,
Yeah,
task 1 will obviously be done.
right.
Right. Task 2 will be done this year. Excuse me, and task 3 will be started this year. Okay? And then task 4 will definitely be started and moving along quite a bit this year, ideally, because once December 1st hits, they're just giving us the report and going forward. They're not waiting for us to approve it. Right?
Okay, right, so we pay attention is what you're telling us.
Yes. So does that help, Steve?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else for Mike?
I would like to point out that I didn't have much to do with it. I'm sure Billy will talk about the new drainage down Main Street, lower Main, which looks great. Because that was one of the things that we identified as we were looking at the seawall project of an area of runoff concern. And that should really help us, especially down near the park when we're playing with our new, feeder and so on, as the weather changes and so on. So that was a nice thing. When we get together for the seawall stuff, we're going to talk about other things that we need to do for the whole committee. Jeffrey has asked, what else are we doing besides the seawall thing?
You mean the infrastructure committee?
Yes.
Understand.
And Mike, I don't know if you know Mark Stelmack, he owns Swallowdale, but he's an environmental engineer in Portland, and I think he would be a great asset to your committee.
Great.
And he has agreed that if you will have him, he would join.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, so if you can
So
send me his
I will-
contact and
I will.
just introduce us, that would be
Yeah.
perfect.
Great.
Where does he live?
He lives in Portland, and he owns Swallowdale. He's Paula's husband.
Oh.
Paula and Mark.
Okay, yeah, all right, right on. Yeah, that sounds great. Well, the more the merrier. Anybody else wants to come, please do.
Anything else for Mike?
A new station alert has arrived.
A new station alert has arrived. Personnel Committee, Ms. Metcalf.
Sorry, totally did not do anything on that. Missed that opportunity.
For what's that?
Personnel Committee.
Okay.
And I think that the first item, well, there are two primary items facing them.
Yeah.
One is the departure of our beloved treasurer,
Right.
and the second is the situation with the office manager.
Right, and totally took it off my list.
Okay,
I'd like to propose we go to executive session and talk about that a little bit, if we could. I don't know when, I'm just saying, I'd like to propose to do that sometime today.
to discuss the future
Yes, the future.
situations.
Yes.
I don't know if we need
Yeah,
to.
executive
Well-
session for personnel matters can only be an executive session if they are specific person.
Yes, they are. My concern.
Okay,
Okay,
I mean, I need to discuss the past to talk about the future. Let's just put it that way. Is that, does
yeah,
that?
that sounds, as long as you, if you want to talk.
okay. Utility Committee.
Oh, utility committee. The utility committee met on Friday. We are in the process of preparing our budgets, which will be presented to you for 2020. They will be presented in January for approval. We're on the first draft stage. Be prepared for seeing some really hard work, particularly on the sewer side, because when you have year-round testing versus 7-month testing, you're doing multiples of costs. And so we have some really hard work in front of us, and we've got some good ideas that we're investigating. Once again, the plant is working in accordance with our license, and we have no exceedances, no violations. As Mike mentioned, we've installed the feeder for our tablet form of chemicals, which we think is going to work hard, and there are otherwise no action items for all of you.
Is that that big concrete thing?
Yeah, so that was always there, and it had combed up to a little manhole, and now it's wide open so that, now we need to make sure nobody falls in.
Sounds good. Mr. Terrell, you're on the phone.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Steve.
So Judy and I had a discussion about budgets and PUC filings, and do you have a problem if I talk about that at all?
Well, I don't have a problem talking about it. We are beginning an investigation, so it's hypothetical. And I'm
Good.
not sure, mindful that we're trying to keep our reports short.
Yes.
There's no action item. But the
But I
water
think-
department in particular, to set its rates, needs to get approval from the PUC. We are looking at the prospect of maybe,
Possibly.
don't get excited, viewers, reducing our water bite, because we know we're going to have to ask our villagers to increase their sewer bite. So we're looking at the timing for PUC filings and what paperwork we have to do to get that approved. A piece of that is going to be permission to change our meter readings at the very least from 3 times a year to once a year, because let's face it, our water consumption is about $3 or $4 a year, so why read it 3 times? So we're looking into that, and we are supposed to have hard answers on that by the November meeting. Dick McElhaney will be consulting with the Maine Water Resources people to get that.
And one other thing I'd just like to point out is October 31st, we have a deadline to have the drawings submitted to the state. That's the next item to check off for the new building. So the engineer was here during the meeting and went over some draft plans, but it wasn't the guy who was actually doing the design, but they brought somebody else in just because we have such a short timeline. Now he's going to relay our comments back to them, and they're going to do sort of 95% design that's stamped for permitting only, send that to the state for their comments. At that point, we'll have to run it by Tubi for shoreline zoning, and we will have checked our box for October 31st.
And we're in really good shape to make sure that is taken, because the plans were,
Yeah, it's preferences at this point. It's not major problems.
And I think that's all wonderful, and thanks very much for getting that done. I would ask that as this investigation takes place, is that it is quite likely you do not want to reduce water rates. One of the challenges we have is that we are manually reading meters as we have for, I don't know,
ever since we've had
20,
these.
30 years, whatever it is. There is technology out there that allows you to read those much more efficiently. That technology is not inexpensive, but it exists. I raised this issue some time ago, and Dick McElhaney made the call it was too expensive. Now, you can tell me what too expensive is, but if it costs us $50,000 to put this in place, and we save $5,000 a year, it's what I would call a good investment. So I would like the utilities trustees to investigate automating to the greatest extent possible our meter reading process, which will do two things. It reduces the labor that Bill spends doing this kind of stuff, and it would be an automatic feed to the billing system that eliminates 100% of the manual entry errors that we have now, and reduces what is currently a 3-day, 24-hour process to enter this stuff, so that we can really reduce expenses in that going forward. I think one of the challenges is when you talk about things are expensive, sometimes $10 is a lot of money, sometimes $10,000 doesn't really matter. It depends what you're talking about. But I think it is, I think we need the answers. We need the answers from someone besides Dick, because it's a more complicated issue. And you need to do calculations for net present value, which is not what I do. But at least you can figure out if it will be a good investment for the utilities or not. And if so, you may need to hold your water rates to fund that. And then reduce water rates perhaps dramatically down the road once that system is in place to relieve the other expenses associated with billing today.
Mike, you had a comment?
Yeah, we actually have discussed the fact that it is costly to do this 3 times a year, and one of the things that we've talked about is going to reading the meters once a year. We don't know what the liability is with the PUC would accept that, but we will always have a certain amount of meters that we have to go and collect every fall anyway, so we have to calculate that in. So if we went to once a year and we were collecting half of them, then where's the cutoff on the present work?
Yeah,
And that's, we should look at that.
But my position is you don't just say it's too expensive.
I agree with you.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Good. So the utility trustees will conduct that investigation.
We're doing hard work. Miles is a great contributor as first time and has some great ideas at the last minute.
Excellent. You done with utilities committee for the moment?
Yes.
Safety committee, Mr. Terrell.
Good, hi, yep.
Can you crank up the volume on
It says hi.
it? Is it?
I think you're moving the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
We are meeting towards the end of October at our next meeting. And in our last meeting, which I summarized as part of the last overview, in advance of the last overview, we are going to look at a number of things for next season and understand relative budget priorities to some, including these times and other things, which more details to come. So there's really not much of an update at this stage, except, and maybe Steve's going to get into his update. What we're interested to know in advance of the meeting is where we stand vis-a-vis budget, spending versus budget, to know whether there's any money we can use for next year, in advance of next year. So that's it really. There's a lot of things that we're going to look at, which I summarized in the last conversation, my last notes that I mentioned.
Thank you.
Relative to short update, we're in that between time. So
Peaceful time.
I don't know if Steve has that update or Bill, someone that can give us a snapshot of the budget, and then we can know how to proceed.
Steve, you want to respond to that now, or want to talk about it?
I just shouldn't wait.
We'll wait on that, Michael, until we get to Steve's report.
Okay, great, thank you.
Where's the car?
The
Village
That's a
agent
village
report.
report.
Oh, in other words, it hasn't gone back to the safety committee yet.
No. Waterfront Safety Committee?
So you have the written minutes in front of you. Some highlights of our September 29th meeting include, we reviewed our progress this summer and we're pleased with the progress we've made in year one of implementing the voluntary registration process and implementation of the waterfront storage rules. We talked about the fact that there are 3 or 4 chronic rule breakers. And the way we dealt with the chronic rule breakers this year is our assistant wharf masters, Craig Brigham and Jim Coughlin, would just move their dinghies. And we thank them for their service, which they'll continue to do. We also think that over time, compliance will increase as more and more people understand the rules and see other people abiding by the rules. But we're talking about some of the things we might do next year to help people understand that they're in violation of the rules. So having a violation tag, that as your dinghy gets moved, it also gets tagged, so there's something that clearly says, you broke the rules, here's it, and here's why. We also are talking about the possibility of charging a fee for to people where we have to repeatedly move their dinghies. That we don't want people to see this as a dinghy valet service. That you've got to constantly do it. So we're looking at that. Our assistant wharf masters, who are the people moving dinghies around, have expressed some concern and would like clarification on liability coverage. So if they move a dinghy and the dinghy sinks,
Let's say hypothetically, they lose the cover
of it, we
of
have
their
that.
engine, hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Because that's what I'm reminded.
Is there coverage? So I told them that we would check into that. We're going to be doing some upgrades to the new outflow, and Bill Page will figure out, he and Gordon will figure out the cost associated with that. The committee would like the overseers to consider a mandatory registration process for the 2020 season. And one of the things the committee has asked Bill Page to do is really look at the cost associated with maintaining the wharf float and the outfloat, so we can start to have a fee structure that gets in balance with those costs. And our belief is to be able to say, particularly to the boating community, this is what these assets cost the village, and boaters have to pay their fair share of that. With that information, we can start to suggest what we believe the mandatory fee should be, and where it should start and what it should grow up to. So what we'll need some guidance on is how do we go about the process of having a public hearing and doing the things necessary.
Steve?
We have history now, and Bill, if you could get Scott to just kind of break out the outflows. I mean, I don't think it's clear on his invoice right now, but going forward, it'd be very easy to say, do me a favor and just make sure you categorize your work on specific things to those, so you have that data.
Yeah. Because that's important to figure, what should the fee be? I mean,
Right.
This year it was $5, which was a little bit of a random number to help cover overhead and things like that. But clearly, it's more than $5 that we need to figure that out. And future topics of discussion will be talking about managing congestion on the North Shore, kayaks, and other things that we started this year, but there's more work to be done on that.
I just like to say that I'd like to thank Jeffrey for everything he's done on this committee, because one of the things I think that when we started this was that discussion of how we need to be sort of self-funding with respect to this was something that there was a lot of different opinions on that, and it's good that it's starting to gel down to making a lot more sense.
Yeah, I want to thank the committee for all the work they did. It's clearly the best it's ever been since I've been here. With regard to your repeat offenders, it's my understanding they have basically said we're not going to do it.
Steve is stating that his observation is that the repeat offenders will continue to repeat.
And have said that that's their intention. So one of the things I'd encourage the overseers to think about is a police enforcement, because you don't want your assistant wharf masters and wharf masters trying to deal with their fellow residents.
Right.
And if we're spending the money on the police force that we're spending, when someone reaches a certain point, call it a parking ticket.
Right.
And I don't care what you call it, and make it significant enough, because in some cases, if you say, we're gonna give you a $10 ticket, well, you've got a $10 valet service.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to put something out there that is impactful enough
Yeah.
that they will respond, and you want it enforced by our police department.
Right.
That's opinion of one.
Well, and I would just say that all of these things work or don't work based on enforcement. Because, you know, rules are meaningless if there's not enforcement backing them up. So that's part of what we need to figure out.
Hands smart.
So,
Speaking
did
of-
I understand, excuse me, did I understand, Jeffrey, that you're asking the overseers to authorize a 2020 fee?
Yes, and make it a mandatory thing.
But today, you want that?
No.
We wanted the numbers first.
Yeah, we need the numbers first. So we're gonna come back and
Maybe November, maybe
Yeah.
January.
But the answer is yes, he is going to ask for that.
there will be
Before
a
next
request,
season.
Not today.
not today.
Yeah, and you're gonna work with Scott to see if we can quantify what that is, and we'll just take grounds excavation expense for pulling and allocate it, you know, evenly across each wharf, right? It's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Anything else for Jeffrey? Hearing none, we move on to the tree warden report. Vicki?
I met with our arborist last Saturday, and we went around and looked at trees. When he's in the village, he did say, you know, people come out of nowhere and point things out to him. But we do have a plan for next year. Very briefly, there's a big branch on one of the large trees in Auditorium Park that's going to be pruned. There's a person in Auditorium Park to the right down by the water has sent a couple letters about pruning trees there and a ramp that goes down to the shore. So he's going to prune over there. There's a tree on Upper West Street that we're taking down. There's a ribbon on it if you want to know which one it is, and a scraggly little fir tree he's going to take down. And then he's going to check the cabling in that tree we call the Beast that he pruned last year. But he's going to go up and just check the cabling to make sure it is up to today's standards. I think I reported in the spring, he checked the one in Auditorium Park, and that cabling luckily is in great shape and was done to whatever the standards are that he looks for. And then prune a bunch of trees in Blaisdell where they need pruning. And there is one large tree that has a little tree stick that grew next to it that doesn't really belong there. So I gave him the okay to take that one down. It will keep the larger tree healthier. And that is pretty much that. He's just really easy to work with, and he's just been really, really kind. I can't say enough about his ability to come over and do things. So.
Question, when trees come down like these scraggly little fir up on West Street you referred to, who coordinates the updating of the tree inventory that has been created now? You do? Okay, great. Any questions for Vicki? Any town of Northport issues that we're aware of?
I would suggest that until Nordic Outperforms is built or defunct, either way, right? We had under a bullet under that, it says Nordic, because it's kind of a town of Northport. Yeah. We don't need to do it in our committee reports, we should do it outside of that. So I do have some things to talk about there. If we can.
And I'd like to add a couple things too.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about it right now. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
before you start, are you getting copies of the information that comes in? Because we don't really have an office manager. I
Yes.
just want to make sure stuff's
Yes,
getting.
and that's one of the things, yeah, we don't have an office manager, and I don't see the first one, but I just got a reminder this week that there's a meeting on October 17th,
Wednesday.
which is Wednesday, and I cannot attend that one. Oh, it's a Thursday, actually, isn't it?
Yes, it's Thursday.
Yeah, I will be in Springfield, Mass.
And what's the nature of that meeting?
That's one of the interviewer meetings at, so I was gonna ask you, Judy, if you could possibly.
It was in the daytime, right?
Yeah, it's-
Yeah,
it's-
I did get notice,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
getting the
I'll go.
NBC emails, right?
I am getting, it's interesting, I'm getting Cynthia Bertucci's emails, I'm not getting, someone else's. So some I get from the village, some I get from Cynthia, the ones from Cynthia are much better.
Oh, I was thinking of the Belfast Planning Board.
No,
That
hold on, we're gonna talk about this first, because this is a little.
Right, no, I thought that's what's on the 16th. But this meeting is to look at everything that's been, no? Okay.
What, at the beat?
The BEAT meeting on the 17th
Yes.
is to look at everything that's been
Yes,
submitted
right.
as issues, and then the BEAT is going to determine which of those issues they're going to look at. That's my
Yes,
understanding.
that's important.
And what time is that meeting?
I can look it up, I'll let you know.
I'll go, I just put
Okay,
it in my
great,
calendar.
yeah, it'd be great.
If Dave, have to make sure I know the
The way
time,
they
and
wrote
I'll
our
go in the
little
Augusta.
card is,
Uh-huh.
your name's on it, and then mine's written in ink on the back, so it's
Okay.
part of those with the card on it.
Yeah,
So that's
so,
this in Augusta?
yeah, it's in Augusta.
Yeah, that's the Augusta. It'll be at the
It's
Civic
the
Center.
Civic Center, yeah. Just make sure I know the time.
Right, and then the 23rd is the walkthrough, John, that you're
Right,
gonna
here's-
attend, and I'm gonna attend as well, but John.
No, that's the one that I cannot attend because I'm out. Remember
But-
the 23rd?
The meeting on the 17th, it's my understanding, they're going to determine who goes with them on their site visit. So apparently, everybody is not automatically invited.
Okay.
Okay, well,
All right.
obviously the village has it.
Yeah,
We
as an
will allow-
intervener,
We'll
we'll
have
allow,
one,
yeah.
at least one
Yeah,
person.
we'll be
so-
there.
Yeah, I mean, you can go with me on that too, Judy. if you
Yeah,
want.
I'm not sure when I say we.
Right, well, that's why, I mean, this is a big time commitment, and we're gonna have to
Yeah.
tag team on this to get
Yeah.
it done. So
Right.
Yeah.
I think if we try to keep the two of us doing it,
Yeah.
at least there'll be some continuity for us, okay?
Okay,
Yeah, all right.
so just make sure I know the time.
All right,
Yeah, I
that's,
will do that for
I'm
you.
feeling still purple over personnel.
All right.
okay, don't worry
So
about it.
that's the first thing.
That's-
And then the second thing is if you want to go forward with the planning, so the planning board meetings have been moving along. And this particular week coming up, they're going to have water issues, wetlands and so on. And I just like to say that to me, the process seems to be going better than I thought it was originally. Originally, it felt a lot like they were going through the motions and they were just taking the information and they were just going to kind of approve issues as they go. And I think what they've realized is that until the BEAT process works out a lot of the permit issues, that they can't approve any issues. So they're just sort of opening every issue and then they're kind of tabling it and they're opening the next one. And that's where they are. And it's a long process. They've had 8 or 9 meetings maybe now, and they still haven't opened all the issues. I did a presentation for Upstream Watch for 2 of the issues at the last meeting, and I'll do the air quality one as well. Yes.
I saw the report of your comments and they were very, very cogent and helpful.
And you know, again, even when I'm representing Upstream Watch, John, I'm still on our focus, which is we are not for or against this project, but these are the issues, right, that are out there. And in order for this project to be approved, you need conditions on these issues that make sense for everybody.
And just for those who are watching, the Board of Overseers has sent a letter, which I signed, to the BEP, Bureau of Environmental Protection, in which we said that as an intervener in this process, we would like to attend the October 23rd site walk, and we had some suggestions about issues that they might want to be considering.
And that's what they're going to discuss on the 17th.
Right, which issues are real issues, essentially, so we're going through the checklist for each intervener.
Right.
And then it's also my understanding that at that point, if certain interveners have the same issues, they're going to group them together so
Yes,
that the
correct,
presentation has to be, so there's no redundancy there.
It's-
Because they're, right, or
Correct.
minimizing the amount of redundancy.
Right, right.
Anything else on Nordic Aqua Farms?
Yeah, about our bay, how about that? We'll include this in here because it's part of the Nordic issue. And I do want to say that, you know, I work with Upstream Watch, but their stance is pretty much the same as ours. Nobody's against aquaculture or good business or anything like that. We just don't want it to ruin our bay. And hopefully if they do go forward, hopefully if they do go forward, these things will be taken into consideration. But a couple things, actually these are more like public announcements. Let me wait till the end. there's a new group that's formed, it's Friends of Harriet Hartway, and they're, hopefully, they're gonna take over the conservancy of the Untitled area, and they're having an opening celebration, along with explanation on Saturday the 19th, I think from 10 to 12. And it's at Little River Center, down at the basin there where that is, big White House there. Everybody's invited. I've got these little flyers that talk about that and give you the time, so if everybody wants to take one.
Danny put a note in.
Dan put a thing in the Bayside paper, and so it's conservation, it's keep that area pristine, hopefully, and we applaud their efforts. So I told them I would bring that up here.
Anything else?
And there was one other piece of this,
You have one for Linda?
this summary. You'll recall that we reviewed the grant of the Submerged lands lease, and there was a appeal deadline on that of October 11th, which was this Friday. So, and it's a conditional grant that the lease says, yes, you can have your lease if you can prove that the land that you're crossing in pipe, that you have the right to do it. And of course, as this tells you, there's title issues in TITLE, not TIDAL issues that are a big issue there. So I spoke with I would say she's the lead counsel for the Lobstermen's Union, which is the most vocal adversaries of NAF. And so spoke with her 10, 15 days prior to the deadline to reinforce that we wanted to assure that no deadlines were passed without action, but that the village had no budget to file pleadings. We just don't have the money. She advised that she would be filing a petition, what we call an ADC petition, in violation, in opposition to the submerged land lease. I'm not sure if she did. The little subcommittee on NAF that we have in ad hoc spoke to review that conclusion, except that Vicki was not on the phone because I forgot to get Vicki on the phone. And we concluded that it was the best we could do is to focus our energies on these BEP hearings, this intervenor status, because we did not have the resources to challenge a conditional land lease in any event. So we made a decision that we would not file something in court, particularly where it's a conditional land lease they can't do anything on it right now anyway, so.
Right, and I felt also that because the land we're talking about isn't in the village.
It's not even Northport, is it?
Right, so it's not really our fight to fight there anyway, so.
So I guess the short story is we are trying to track all these deadlines. There are times that we are getting on the phone and saying, what are we going to do? And trying to keep people who do have money involved in the fight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the president. I have nothing to say. I'm going to pass and turn it over to Mr. Treasurer.
And I would like to pass, but unfortunately I can't. So here are some warrants. I'm going to run through this quickly, and then you can ask any question you want to, because I could probably go for an hour or two on all the things that are going on. And there's a certain element of trust. I hope I'm doing the right thing, but if you want details, I'm more than happy to provide them. Regrettably, I cannot produce a commented copy of financials that's worth the effort to do so. We've cleaned up a lot of standing issues and are making progress on others. We are now current on deposits and payments to the best of my knowledge. Some of our vendors were months behind in payments. I have given you all a marked up copy of financials for general government. The yellow lines are accounts that are wrong. So if you go through it, you take a look at it, you're going to go, boy, that's the pits. That is, in many cases, the accounting firm's issue. So there are things that are working to each of those lines' advantage. There are things that are working to some other lines' disadvantage. And the upshot is, I can't give you an estimated variance to budget, which, Mike, I guess is kind of the question you were looking at for safety, but I'll go into a little more detail at this time. Let's see. We're making progress in utilities, but I took a look at those briefly. I've not given utilities any meaningful information for a couple of months. The things are, I think, better, but the totals are still wrong, and I think the lines you look at here, like office supplies, postage, payroll taxes, the things that cross all three business units are likely incorrect in utilities as well. I know that water revenue appears to be wrong based upon what I saw, so that's still kind of a mess. In terms of old business, all of Amy's time is now going to utilities. The Cove Road project, I would like to have some timelines on for payment, because I know they're coming up. I know we have a contract with Farley, and I've not seen that. That contract should be uploaded to Dropbox. We have upgraded internet, Consolidated finally put in new capacity in their hub. So we have a very robust connection, which now allows our printer to work and allows us to upload documents from here. A lot of what I was doing was trying to organize things here, take them to my home, upload them, bring them back, reorganize them. So let me tell you that you're saving money no matter what our internet costs are. The town is now doing our tax deposits. So as needed, they run them up, they're right across the street from the existing bank, so life is good. I have made a number of changes in process to reduce the time required for what we're doing. We're using online banking, which really gives us immediate payment to key vendors. People like Tidewater and Pinkertons who have contracts with us, our oil company in the form of a budget plan, Pinkertons in the form of a 3-year contract are paid automatically each month. We will still support those with invoices through the warrant. We are coding visa statements differently. We used to send the accounting firm all of the individual receipts. Now we're sending them a recap where they need to be coded, and attached to that statement for your review are all the individual invoices. Northeast Lab bills us about 12 to 15 times a month, and we used to submit 12 to 15 invoices for payment. We're now submitting 1. So that will save a bunch of time in terms of processing, because now there's 1 transaction as opposed to 15. I think we have a significant risk with our accounting firm. I got a call from our key accountant. We used to pay $6,000 a month. He called up and said, it pains me to tell you this, but we need to increase your fees, and we think it should be $3,000 a month, although the partners are pushing.
600 a month.
600, you said
You
6,000.
said 6,000.
Yeah.
600 a month, I'm sorry. So they think realistically it ought to be 4,500 to 5,000 a month. And he said, so long discussion made short. We have caused a number of problems that certainly justify that.
Yeah.
We're going to pay them $3,000 for last month's work, which is a fairly significant hit. And I am moving forward negotiating fees. So give you an idea about fee increases. One of his comments was, well, gee, we don't think we were probably billing you properly before. We were using more time. And I think the problem is he's new to the firm, and that what they were billing us before was just fine. I have one of their principals as my primary accountant personally. The managing director for the firm is someone who held our account for a couple, 3 months. And I'm going to send a rather pointed letter about the fact that we used to get this done with 1 lead accountant and a staff bookkeeper. Now we have a staff bookkeeper, a lead accountant, and 2 supervisors. That they botched the handoff from Portland to Connecticut. They botched the second handoff in Connecticut to a second team. And part of that process is that we're late on 2 bond payments for the first time in the history of the Village Corporation. Which is inexcusable. They had memorized transactions, the people in Portland did a fabulous job, we never missed a payment, and they missed 2 bond payments. So that will undoubtedly bubble up somewhere along the line in our audit. So there's no real positive news. It's just other than we are making progress. Let's see.
I won't put that.
Oh, yeah, that's it, right? You just throw that in there.
I sent all of your office accounting analysis,
That was the show.
and you probably didn't look at it in great detail, but what it basically says is today, based on my estimates, it looks like we'll be almost $4,000 overspent.
Did you get it?
Now, $4,000, frankly, is not bad news from where I sit. It's $3,000 on a one-time basis for this last payment, assuming I can convince the accounting firm to charge us a reasonable amount. And then it's another, rough $1,000 worth of increased expenses. But if you look at the out weeks, we reduce things dramatically because we don't have an office manager, we don't have that expense. And we are actually underspent in November and December. So the net for the year really isn't all that bad, given what we've gone through. So what that really does from a variance perspective is, I think, tells us we should not spend any money anywhere that was not specifically budgeted. With regard to safety, I think that means the $5,000 which was approved is something that's still up for consideration as we go through the year. Once we have a solid set of financials, we can make a decision as to whether we have extra money to spend and where the overseers choose to spend it.
Steve, do you think that November will bring greater clarity in terms of this?
I thought August would bring clarity in terms of this. I don't understand why utilities revenue is not correct, as Amy told me it was set. So I can go back and I can look at the first trimester, and that revenue appears to be correct. The second trimester still appears to be incorrect. And I've spent all of 5 minutes on that, so that's really all I can tell you. But I continue to work on it. I mean, I was here for 7 hours yesterday. I get out of work in the afternoon, and I work for 3 or 4 hours at night. I don't think I will need to do that in the month to come. Because when I walk out of here today, all the invoices that we have done, everything that needs to be mailed will be done, and we'll have one more catch up at the end of the month when Bill sends me a packet of information that dribbles in. So really making significant progress in spite of what I've said, but there are a lot of things that are still unresolved. I now need to go through these financials and try to determine where I want the accountants to spend their time to figure out why they didn't allocate the computer to all 3 business units instead of just charging it to general. Community hall rental, we have $150 worth of community hall rental, and we know that's wrong. We have rent from utilities is overstated, and I've asked them twice to repair that, and they have not. So,
And
it's ugly.
there's only 105 for watercraft registration, and we know that there's more for that.
And we may or may not find those things. So you had offered to do some filing for us, Vicki, and if you want to stick around after this meeting, we can chat about things that we're ready to start looking at. Because I've been able to rummage through everything, and I have the core pieces I need to make sure what we're doing going forward is clean. Now the trick is to dig into the history and see what we can do, put things away where they belong, and see if we discover anything in those files as we go.
Vicki?
I had a question and then it went away, but how do you know that $105 in community hall rental is wrong?
150.
So-
150.
We only,
$150.
because people used it more.
What I can tell you is
Is that a sense, I mean.
Is that a seasonal number?
The
whole year.
the community groups don't have to pay. I don't know whatever else went on, but we don't have the records, just like we don't have the records for the boats.
Just like one class,
So what you're saying is, you're not,
right? Is over.
$150 came in and was allocated to the community hall. If there's more money, we don't know where they allocated it in there, or we don't know where the money is. I mean, I know we've got issues here. I'm just wondering how much we're just gonna chalk it up to experience and move on. I mean, I'm not sure that we took in more than $150.
Well, Robinson Ballet and the yoga teacher.
Oh, well, that's right.
There's
That's
no-
right, the yoga teacher, all those things, yeah,
You're
right.
spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
So for many years, we budgeted different lines. We know historically we bring in about $800 in
Right.
community hall rental. That did not happen, that's why we know it's wrong.
Right.
Now where it is, if we can find slips for community hall rental, we can back that out because we have revenue in something we call miscellaneous, and I don't do miscellaneous.
Yeah, so why is it
Stuff
paid
belongs where it
So why
belongs.
is it, okay.
So all those
Okay.
things.
Yeah,
The waterfront
I forgot about
stuff,
that.
Bill has been looking for 2 or 3 months now and still can't find it. That's why as we go through every piece of paper in the office, we may very well find it.
Jeffrey?
So, we're sitting here with these warrants in front of us. And I'm struggling because we're looking at financials where you're pointing out the inaccuracies of the financials. And how do these inaccuracies connect to the warrants we're signing?
So
Or not.
two different timing issues.
Okay.
The highlighted spreadsheet you have in front of you is historical. The warrants themselves are current. I'm doing the warrants. Every one of those warrants is backed up by an invoice, and every one, the majority of those have been coded correctly here. I have a few questions for our accountants. Some of them are timing issues where we have the checks for bonds, so they get there in time. They won't appear in the financials till next month, so you'll see that the line is not correct, but that's a timing issue. more so than anything else. The problem in the past was that we may have miscoded invoices, so it got dumped in there. We had a bunch of deposits that we didn't know where they went at the time, and in the interest of getting things closed, we put them into miscellaneous. So that's all historical information, stuff that we should have had the records for. The money was clearly deposited, our account has credit for it. We're not entirely clear where in our financial statements it belonged. And does that help, Jeff?
I think that what Steve, well, let me see if I understand what you said. What Steve is telling you is that the warrants are proper because they are for verified bills in the amount that we expected the bill to be, and we should pay those bills to keep current with the vendors. That's October forward. He is still trying to untangle how all the stuff that happened from January through September went from paying our bills to being reported on the financials. There's a profound inconsistency between what our financials say and what we paid to keep our vendors on task. And that's what he's doing, is historical forensic analysis.
So how do we know we haven't paid some of these vendors already?
So I've gone through the
Right.
bank statements and I've gone through the accounting firm and verified that they have not been paid. That's step number one. Step number two is when our accountants get that information, they do the same thing. So you have two people looking at this to make sure we do not pay things twice.
So we're not paying Pinkerton twice.
No.
Vicki?
Yeah.
And the other piece, if you look at the things that are not highlighted, the vast majority of those are very close to their budget. And those are payments, those are expenses. So the payroll thing, which is our single biggest expense, is absolutely spot on. It's higher than budgeted because we talked before about all the work Bill was doing, things like that. We know we're paying Amy to do extra office work, you know you've got me in there doing things that cost more. That's one of the things that probably isn't highlighted, but you've got an outstanding invoice from me that's gonna push us over budget.
So I'm not gonna sign this right here, because I don't feel like I have proper time to read through this and look at it. I'm trying to listen to what you're saying, and I'm trying to look at this. I'll look at it after the meeting
Yeah.
and sign it, but I can't do it like this, because I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on.
And I applaud that decision.
Okay.
I really do.
I will do it after the meeting, though.
Yeah, and one of the things I've asked overseers to do for 5 years now is pick an invoice and look and see if it makes sense. I don't think
Yeah.
each and every one of you needs to go through each and every single invoice we pay.
Right.
But I think you'd take some comfort if you took a look and said, I've got an invoice from Pinkerton's, Bill said it was okay to pay it, the amount matches the warrant and the check, we're good to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, and I know it's very difficult to do this, that's a historical perspective
Yeah.
of people spending that time, and I think it's time that's poorly spent, but that's what we've always done.
But, and the ones that pique my interest and attention are what are clearly the bond payment things.
And that actually, he's actually put them in here so that they get paid on time for the November date, is that?
Yeah, and you have a ton of supporting documentation attached to those.
Yeah, just because they're the big numbers.
Right.
You look at this, total's 91,000, well, over 60 of it is,
Right.
It's the bond payments.
is the bond
And
payment.
we know we have to pay those.
And we know we have to
And we
pay
know where we are on that one, that's a quick call.
And if I were in your shoes, I would be asking those same questions.
Vicki, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so are we, is it your feeling at this time that we are current with our regular vendors? I mean, old bills have been paid, there's no bills as far as you know.
As to the best of my knowledge. I
You
mean,
haven't
the
heard from
people,
anybody that's,
well, that's right, we're not getting dunning notices.
okay.
I mean, I got a late, so Dick McElhaney with Northeast Labs is now producing this single sheet. 2 of the invoices on there you were signing for in this warrant that will be paid. So the one we're submitting for the next go-round is for the other invoices that have not been paid, does not include the 2 that are being signed for now.
Michael?
So the answer is yes, but I never know what's gonna come out of the woodwork.
Right.
I found some invoices that Dick gave me that are very old, and I don't know where they have been.
Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Steve, I'm sensitive to somebody who might be tuned into this broadcast later and not have context. So to that, can you just perhaps just summarize briefly why, my understanding is there's a couple different reasons why we're in this situation. I just wouldn't want it to be your update not contextualized so that somebody misunderstands why.
Glad to do that. I think that we have done that in past meetings, but the upshot is that we had an office manager who was not well suited to the position. And that there were errors that were made that we didn't uncover until after the office manager chose to seek employment elsewhere.
That's well said.
Okay.
That plus,
And I think that's important because you also mentioned the snafu with the accounting firm. And that's all I'm looking to do is make sure that it's clear to people what we're talking about here and why.
No, I think that's appropriate, but you're okay with what I already said about the accounting firm, correct?
Right.
I am, yeah,
Good.
I am.
Yep.
I'm just sensitive to misunderstanding because, because you're wrestling with a lot, I think doing a great job. It's just that I wouldn't want it misunderstood why we're in this position.
Point taken, thank you.
Judy.
And I wanted to just acknowledge the human toll that this is taking. We have a lot of people working in the office beyond their typical job descriptions to make all this work. Steve is one of them. He's doing an amazing job. Billy is carrying a lot on his shoulder right now. And that's why I want to reinforce that if you have a question on utility bill, ask that of Amy on Monday. Do not ask it of Bill. He doesn't have access to that information. And all of you who have volunteered to file or talk about systems, we're all seeing a better way to do it, and we're trying to get it in place at a time that we know we've got a lot of money issues with the seawall and the little building for the septic system, all this future planning. We want to keep moving forward while looking to get the past taken care of.
Jeffrey, then Miles.
So, I'm putting this on the table, and you all can tell me when we should talk about it. But it seems to me we find ourselves where we find ourselves, and there are a variety of issues that got us to this point. I think what is important to me as we make decisions moving forward is to make sure we have a clear understanding of precisely what happened over the last 6 months that has led us to be at this point. Because I think without really fully understanding what happened and we can't make sure we have a system in place so it doesn't happen again.
We do fully understand what happened. And I can go into that in whatever detail you like.
There is an
That's an
executive
executive
session. That's a good,
Yeah, but
We all need to know what that is.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
right. Miles?
3 questions, comments. One is, in terms of knowing what's happened, I'd like to specifically know what overseers should have been doing, why we didn't know that something was wrong. I don't understand that part, and part of it I wasn't here. Second is, with the accounting firm, if they're continually screwing up, why aren't we looking at a new accounting firm here? I mean, why are we using these people, and why are we paying them money, it sounds like, to fix their own errors?
So, can I answer that question?
Miles is suggesting that we look at a new accounting firm.
So here's the paradox of the accounting firm. If Markham had not acquired Dawson Smith, we had 2 people who were familiar with the account. When some of the things that were occurring started happening, they would have been on the phone to me saying, Steve, this doesn't make any sense. And we would have caught that immediately. Both of those people left Dawson Smith when Markham acquired them. And the new account manager was not familiar with our account at all. Was transferred to their bookkeeping division in Connecticut that did not know our account at all. There was an effort to do some training by the Portland people for the Connecticut people, which worked pretty well. But they then got inundated with errors that they couldn't identify, couldn't get answers to, chased them down to the best of their ability. But that's why it sort of wasn't identified sooner. Now, what I can tell you is the close for this past month was the smoothest it's been. That there are no issues with what the accountants did with this month's close. So everything else predates it, and that is commingled with the things that our office manager did and they did. I don't know if that answers it
The
fully
answer's
enough. or
part of
not.
it, but I'm also concerned if we're paying them money
Yes.
to be fixing their own errors. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of this sounds like they weren't on top of it, now they're trying to fix their errors, and we're paying them again.
Yeah, I would not state it that way at all. What I would tell you is they tried to fix our hours at no expense for several months. And then finally said, we're looking at the hours we're investing in your account, they are significantly different than they used to be. We should have been billing you to the tune of $4,000 or $5,000 a month for the last 3 months and have not. And we need to change your fee structure.
So for instance, if you look at the Markham invoices that we're looking at right now, they are for the flat rate of $600 a month. If they had been doing a lot more work, which is why they're talking about prospectively increasing our fees, but they have been spending a lot more time on this than the $600 a month works. I think it is always a good idea to look at other vendors, the same way we do the request for bids for Pinkerton, for the trash disposal, for snow plowing, for all of those types of things. For instance, you've just reminded us that the two principals of Dawson aren't with Markham. Well, why don't we talk to the two principals who knew us best and see if they'll do it?
There was only one and they will.
Great.
But there's a cost in doing that. And I'd like to know how you manage that transition.
Right.
I've been through this once before, I had a lot of time on my hands. Right now, if you move to another accounting firm, you run the risk of just having this run rampant. Because I don't have the time to work with them to explain what's going on.
Well, the second point I wanted to make one more point, is that when we switched to Dawson, it was because we had a more local bookkeeper who was making all types of mistakes, and Steve was spending a ton of time, and we were spending a lot of money. We saved so much money from what we were doing from, what was it, $1,000 a month or so with, I can't remember the name.
A lot of money.
And we brought it down to $600 a month and had great efficiencies until this year. That's no reason to say we're going to keep doing it this way, but it is not simply a function of accounting moving to Connecticut or employees, or it's all what processes do we require, who do we have the time, and what can we afford.
So the principal of the other firm that left Markham, is that individual local?
Yes, Portland.
Or, but in the state of Maine?
Yeah.
I had a third question.
He's also a very small firm that does not currently staff to do this.
Right.
So he would need to make changes, but he's interested in
Can I
doing
ask a
it.
follow-up?
Miles?
He wanted to ask a follow-up.
So a follow-up to his question. So it is safe to say that what the checks and balances we had before was the accounting firm would find if there was an imbalance.
Can you move the phone closer?
Yeah, sir.
So, and the fact that they didn't do it, to me, seems like that's really their concern. So I would prefer we don't pay them anything more than the $600 a month until they solve the problem. Then we can talk about that extra time. But it seems to me that that's kind of what they did, because that's our checks and balances. And again, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that in an executive session, about how it happened and how we can prevent it going forward. But to me, that seems to make sense, is that there is clearly this went on a lot longer than just one cycle. And because it went on more than one cycle, it has to be, some responsibility has to be on the accountant. That's my thought. So that would be my suggestion, is that, it's not a motion, it's just a suggestion.
Okay, Miles, you still had a third?
Well, finish this because the third's unrelated. to
Okay, and I have to say, I appreciate everyone's concern. I don't want to just keep spinning endlessly on this. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, just briefly,
I
I mean,
have a question when ready.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a money person, so I'm following this as best I can, but it seems to me all this was like the perfect storm between our person and between the accountant, and obviously we need to make some changes with the accountant. I just say, like, let's take this one thing at a time. Let's not make changes here and a change in the accountant. Let's do one thing at a time so that we can make sure that one thing is cleaned up, and whether it's accountant is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then we can change the person here, or vice versa, but let's not change two things at one time, where we could be sitting in this exact same spot and not know it for however many more months again.
Right.
Is all I say.
Essentially, it's like a science experiment where we need
Yeah,
control.
let's change
Let's
one thing
change one
and keep it
control.
constant, and then we can change the next.
Michael?
Terrell?
Terrell?
Yeah, thanks. I just need some clarification, Steve, on the 5,000.
Hold on a sec, we're moving you again.
Here you go.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Steve, I just need some clarification on the 5,000. We can do offline. It was unclear to me what we would have there to work with, and what that I mean, I remember the 5,000, but isn't that already spent? So I'm just, I'm kind of confused there.
No, I think it's worthwhile talking about that right now. So when we create a budget, the committee chairs bid for whatever funds they need to do what they believe is important. It has been a particular point of pride for me that you are as tenacious as you are about the money for the safety committee, and that Vicki is as tenacious as she has been for tree money. That's the right thing to do. Where we find ourselves now is we have spent just about everything we would normally spend in safety by this time of year. So our lifeguards are gone, our police officers are gone, and what we have spent is slightly less than was originally budgeted without the additional $5,000. Does that make sense?
In other words, we haven't touched the 5,000.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And my point is that at any point in time, the overseers, so I'm now going to say that that's not needed, that is not absolutely needed for safety. Would you agree?
And can I just ask another clarifying question?
Well, can you?
For everyone's benefit. The 5,000, Steve, that's what was going to come out of contingency, is that correct?
That is correct.
So what we're talking about here is whether or not, some things that were assumed to come out of contingency originally, when we talked about it, now what we would do is sort of like explore whether or not that's necessary because we're now in contingency.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But another way to look at it is that we make those assumptions every year, and sometimes we discover they're right, and sometimes we discover they're not. But when we reach year end, if we still have unspent funds, we do our best to find a way to spend them if there's something we need to do. And if there's nothing we need to do, we let those funds flow to reserves.
Well, I think it's kind of astounding, frankly, that we had such a projected increase in the safety budget, which was to include initially the assumption that we would be drawing 5,000 from reserve, from contingency, and that we came in still under budget. So somehow, maybe that has to do with the cruiser and other things.
I think it has entirely to do with the cruiser. You didn't have a cruiser, so you didn't have police officers on the payroll.
Right.
Well, I would also think that Bill Page gets some credit for keeping time. But now, the other thing, so that's interesting. So what you're saying, basically, I just want to make sure I understand, is that safety committee should not assume that, okay, now we have 5,000 we can spend now in advance of next year, say, we almost have to move that 5,000 from an accounting perspective back to contingency and then renegotiate around all that, or not, correct?
I would agree, and I would say your assumption is how I look at it, but at this point, the overseers have not said that they want to remove that approval from the safety committee budget.
Well, I don't think we have financials in front of us.
True.
Since we're working off assumptions, I think that's a November conversation.
True, but frankly, that's just sort of a point of order, because no one here is going to approve, I don't believe anyone here would approve spending that money until we have a better picture of exactly what our variances look like.
Right.
We are not.
Right, the overseers haven't expressed an opinion on that, nor frankly, so far have they expressed an opinion on how great it's been that the safety committee came in under budget. So we'll wait.
Well, that goes without saying, Michael.
All right. Are you done, Michael? Okay. Miles?
So the third question, maybe,
Miles?
why is the lifeguard so low? Why is the lifeguard so off? there was 7,500 budgeted, and it looks like 2,100 was spent.
Yeah, so look at the entire yellow band.
Because it went under lifeguard other.
Yeah.
So the net of those two lines, that's an accounting entry. So somebody punched in account ending in 1 instead of account ending in 0, or vice versa.
Right.
When you add those two together, they are $864 underspent for the year. And a big piece of that is one of the lifeguards who we anticipated working through the end of the season left 2 to 3 weeks early because she went back to school.
So really that was
That
not
was
far
on
off, it's
target.
just a matter of
So the
coding.
other should have been under wages.
That's
It's
correct.
just coding, that's a coding
Yeah,
issue.
that's a coding issue.
And I'll be honest with you, it blows my mind that they didn't get that right.
Yeah.
But
Well,
so be
you
it.
know, it's because there's two lifeguards, lifeguard and lifeguard other.
Vicky?
I caught the cynicism.
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't hear that Steve is asking to make any changes now, and I think that's appropriate. We need a cycle or two more of calm, and when he feels comfortable with the financials we have, correct? So I'm in favor of that. And I do want to say that after all the discussions here all summer with the safety committee and all the many things they've done and such a good job, yay for coming in under budget.
Yeah.
You hear that, Michael?
Thank you, Vicki, that's a start, thank you.
We were gonna have a toast later on, it's a shame you already
Yeah,
had
the
it.
shame, the champagne. Okay, anything else received? Miles?
Just the last thing, at some point, I'd like to have some sense of the job description of the accounting firm. I don't, to me, this is fairly simple, there's nothing complicated about this. And even 600 a month sounds, what are they, I don't get it. And you threw out a figure of 4,000 a month, I don't know if you misspoke or you intended to say
No,
4,000.
that's how much.
That's what they want, that's what they,
It makes no sense to me at all. I mean,
No, it
this is
doesn't.
not complicated
Right, right.
stuff. So I'd like to have some sense
It's a
of that.
huge
somewhere.
percentage of our total revenue stream.
So why don't we include, I mean, that'll be obviously part of our executive session.
anything else for Steve?
Mhm.
That was a snap, Steve.
That was
Okay.
good. So we're really.
And those are very good questions, thank you. I mean, I could have gone through all that and more, but I'm glad that we addressed the issues you bubbled up.
Report of the village agent.
I'm going on vacation.
That's only fair since you didn't get your last one.
Well, did I tell you I no longer take Bill's calls or emails?
Oh, that must be why my phone's ringing more.
Well, you gotta slide this way if you're gonna be on camera.
That's all right. Go ahead, Bill.
All right, I don't have a lot. You guys covered most all of it. That's been what's happening with all these committees. They've taken a lot of the work that the village agent used to have to do in reporting to you guys, setting up the table, which helps. And, you know, you guys are all doing an excellent job.
Oh, thank you.
Mike had brought it up, when we were doing the treatment plant, changing the cover up for the new dechlorination system down there, there was kind of a time lapse of the excavator crew that was down there doing that job. So instead of having them sitting there all day long and charging it all off to just sitting there, I finally said, well, you know, I know we're over road budget, but I'm gonna spend the money anyway. I had them go up and work on a drainage system because we're having that water that runs down the center street in Ruggles Park on the basketball side, and it runs down and it goes across the hot top and down around and goes right into where the chlorination chamber and the dechlorination chamber is, and that's a lot of water. And one of the things that Michael Terrell kept bringing up all summer and kept wanting me to go down is every time it rains, he wanted me to go down and sweep the hot top because it's a safety issue. And I said I have no money to do that. Well, I went and hopefully remedied that problem by going into the park, swaling the park out a little bit to get that water to come that's flowing down there, to flow it over towards the catch basin that's already there. It's an experiment. I hope it works. The other experiment that I have coming up is in the spring. As you're going up the hill, the grass ground is higher than the edge of the road. So I'm planning on shaving off that high spot down along the edge of the road, re-grass seeding it, and hopefully that will help with dispersing the water evenly down across that park. That's something that we've been talking about with the contractors for the last several years, how to remedy that problem, because as you know, it's getting to be a big ditch and a gully, and it's a safety hazard there. And I've put gravel in, I've put loom in, I've grass seeded it, we've done everything we can to hold it, and it just doesn't hold. So maybe the next step is to try that, but that's for this spring. Moving on from that, the floats are scheduled to come out after the 15th of October, sometime hopefully in that week, not quite sure yet, it's on tides. So I'd like everybody who has a dinghy on the outfloat or the boat float to please remove them, and also to remind everybody that all their kayaks and all their other boats that are stored on our beach at the North Shore needs to be picked up and moved and not left there throughout the winter, because it causes problems with water runoff and things in the winter time.
Would you like a reminder to go out about that?
Yes.
Is there a date when they should be removed?
Well,
October
it
15th.
it should start after October 15th.
Yeah.
We have a couple of them that have been sitting there for almost 2 years. So people either forget about them, renters left them behind, or whatever. That's something that we're gonna be addressing to, I believe, in the Waterfront Safety
We could
Committee.
sell them during community day.
Yeah,
Yes.
we covered that.
Auction them off.
The yard sale.
Abandoned
There
property.
we go.
As you know, it's been really busy, and taking on this extra thing and trying to be in here on Friday, and some of the other stuff that I've tried to do in the office to keep things moving somewhat smoothly. You know, I've got a lot on my plate. I've just installed 5 new water services to our system this fall. That's kept me busy. I'm working on the Cobra project, water line that's going in now. That's taking up my time. I'm trying to get the village ready for winter time. I got a lot on my plate. It's getting very stressful. The police cruiser has frustrated me to no end. 2 weeks ago, I went in there and I said, look, enough is enough. Install that transmission that's sitting on the floor waiting to be installed. I says, the people who sent it to us want the core back. And they said, yes. The mechanic was in there said, yes. I'm getting tired of listening to them call 5 times a day. And I said, well, what's the problem? Why can't you get it done? He says, well, the boss. I said, well, I want it installed this week. They went and installed it, still doing the same thing.
Oh, no.
So there's some other issue going on there. I've got to get in contact with them this week and find out what's going on. I think it's all to do with what's going on at that garage. What I would like to ask the overseers is for our village vehicles, if I can no longer go to that garage and just go to the Ford garage and have service done there. It's may cost us a little bit more money,
Make a
but
motion, Judy.
Do it.
I move that the vehicles owned by the village be serviced at Quirk or any other dealer of choice by our village agent. I say Quirk because it's Belfast, I have no relationship with it.
Yeah.
so,
I second.
It's just frustrating, and I can't seem to get anywhere.
Trying to take a full vote, do we need to?
Yeah.
I don't think you need a vote. Bill has the right to choose whatever vendor he
He wanted
wishes.
it though.
Well, it depends on if it's over $500, so let's just do it and
Yeah.
done, right?
Well, that would be the thing, whatever the repair is, I have to work it with Steve, because
Oh,
if it's above my amount, Steve has to get involved to pay it before we can get
and
it
you
done.
don't need our approval for that.
Well, I mean, we do, but what we were working under was a premise that the transmission replacement would not be more than the $500 and was warranted.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we are on that. I am also almost at the point of telling them, give me a bill for what you've done and we're gonna haul it out of there and go somewhere else.
Exactly.
At this point, I mean,
We have time now, so we have time to start over, so.
Right, and it was under warranty, right, so.
well, now
Minimum should
I'm
be
wondering,
minimum.
because if it's not in the transmission itself, those people may say, well, this is not.
Well, these people replaced the transmission, and that piece was under warranty. When you take it to court, that might be something else. Yes, we do understand that, but these people, there should not be a huge bill because the work they did was
Right.
supposedly under warranty.
Okay.
What else?
All right, the other thing is, I still can't get nowhere, Michael Terrell, with those safety flags that you're talking about. I haven't had time to do any of that stuff, because I'm really busy, so I have no idea, I don't even know where he got them. I've asked him, Evan several times for where he was talking about, for me to go look for them, get a price. I have not been able to do that.
I can help you with that.
I just need a little help on that. I can't seem to get nowhere with him on some of that stuff, so. Other
So
than,
let's take it offline, you and I. How's
yeah,
that?
okay. Other than that, I think I'm pretty well, unless there's other questions that you guys have out there for me, because,
Well, I just wanted to report that you had raised the sills on the jailhouse and what we want to do about it, and I said I would speak to the Historical Society, so I did, and they're going to discuss it when Beverly gets back on October 20th, but I asked them if they would be willing to make a contribution of some sort to the building. Does it matter to them, and should we have a plaque? Those are the three questions I posed.
okay. All right, yeah, see, I forgot about that. Easy to
Because the
do.
one, I forgot about personnel, so there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Michael?
I-
Michael Terrell?
Yeah, the bill that came up yesterday in the tree committee, it's not tree committee, this is probably something to add to your list. The bench around the main tree in Ruggles Park is really, it's falling apart.
Yeah,
So is there a way we could get, like a draft, good old beloved Rob Sherman to help with that next season?
Yeah,
I was gonna report that to Judy, after the meeting.
it's a family bench.
It's a family bench kind of thing there, and Judy had told me when it come time for some work to be done with that, to notify her, and she would try to
That's great.
get that straightened out. So yes, it was on my list to ask her today before she.
Yeah, the family will take care of it.
Because
And
it is coming
Rob,
apart.
particularly if Rob will do it.
Thank you.
I have a question. With respect to the wood pile that was moved from the end of North Ave.
Right.
I noticed that we asked him to move that wood pile, and a lot of it had to do with, so we could do some drainage things, but also because it was on village property. And I also note that every year on Broadway, there's a wood pile that's added there, and that's added there now. So how does that fit into sort of what the governance committee is doing? What Bill, with plowing, is that an issue for plowing?
Well,
I'm just curious how all this fits together.
well, as I understand, the wood pile on Broadway is, while it's being piled, it is on the street being offloaded, but that it's actually stored on the gentleman's property. No?
It could be in the town of Northport Road, right?
Well, to the extent that all of our, yeah, okay.
It definitely is, because the road is not only 20 feet wide there, and
Yeah.
it's a 35-foot right of way. It has to be.
I mean, because if I remember right, the house only sits on the lot, there's no extra space.
All right, well, so you want to.
So I don't know, what are we doing about that? And I missed the last meeting, so I know there was a discussion of the signs and so on. Is this something that's being taken up as part of?
Oh,
Is
well,
parking including,
parking will
issues
include
with-
the 1 North Street issue.
but just
Which
right
is the
of way in
signs.
general?
Right.
Or-
Right.
Okay.
And remember that we also, this is collateral, we also have a conversation that's been going on with Ned and Brockway to label the public rights of way, the
Yes.
walkways.
Yes.
And they are on the backside working on that, pretty cool
Okay.
signs.
So, and then signage in general for like stop signs and speed limits that we had talked about, is that something that could come out of that $5,000 contingency, or would that be something that's outside of safety committee?
But some of that will be taken up with the governance discussion.
Right, parking, what we talked about
Parking.
today
That's what I'm
was,
just curious.
Yeah.
what we talked today about is making sure people understand parking in the context of safety, in the context of access, in the context of fairness, and how you communicate that through signs as one piece.
Okay.
We didn't go so far as, stop signs, but we did say, this was our first conversation.
Yeah, I
about those
understand.
things we're
You're
talking
nowhere near to the details yet.
Right,
But it's within what you're considering talking about.
yeah, we did
And
specifically talk about that.
getting back to all the villagers about the right of way and what that means for the village and for Billy's access to it and.
Right, for instance, one thing that we talked about, and we were only brainstorming, but where we have a way to deal with the parking on the various roads is to remind people that that is a right of way, and maybe what we do, and we're nowhere near presenting this as an option or a recommendation, but maybe we say if you're gonna park on the side of the road, only 2 of your wheels can be on the side of the road. The rest have to be in your yard. So we try to make sure that when an ambulance or a fire truck
Right.
or a delivery truck for the utility department comes into Bayside, they can get where they need to go.
Right, you're trying to define in the existing reg, you have to pull off to the extent possible, you're trying to define what is possible, or what needs to be passed. Okay.
Anything else for Bill?
John,
Yes, Blair.
Regarding Ian's woodpile, I used to own that building. He's in the right of way.
Okay.
We all are, pretty much.
I think the survey things to show.
Anything else for Bill? Hearing none, we'll move on to report of the office manager.
That would be me, and I did it earlier.
Thank you. Comments by meeting attendees on any agenda items?
I think Blair just commented.
we need to buy a new phone,
Yes.
because we just need to bite the bullet and do it. We have committee meetings that use this, we have overseers that want to participate but can't be here, and we just need to get a new contraption.
Wasn't somebody gonna look into that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I had my IT people. I said a system, and that was crazy cost.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think buying a new phone is the answer. I think the phone works just fine. We're trying to do more with that phone than it's designed to do.
But
So
we need the little
we're
microphone.
back to system. And it may be that you need hanging microphones going the full length of this so that people can hear. So,
So at my office, we have a thing that looks just like this, but it has tentacles that come out
Yep.
with microphones. So you can have that, and you can have 3 or 4 I think if we had that, it would work. So the question is, can we add microphones to this, or do we
We'll
just
get
need
one, enough, if they.
buy one that's got
The
the?
newer generation.
Can
If you know of one that you've used that you know works, then by all, put it
Yes, the
in,
price.
put it in the hat
Please
so
report
somebody
to
can
us.
check the price
Okay.
on it,
All
yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alright.
I agree. New and continuing business before we go into executive session? Miles?
I just had a quick question. I am feeling the need for a directory of Bayside, and I don't know if I can just voluntarily,
Can't hear Miles.
He wants a Bayside directory.
yeah, and it would be clearly voluntary, but for instance, one of our neighbors had a fall, and if they had our phone number, they could just call me, but I don't have people's phone numbers. Can I just do this? Do the overseers need to authorize it?
I think we can.
Do it.
I have one created my own voluntarily, a private one, because for exactly that reason. But I don't know if the overseers want to suggest this to the community. I'm not sure how to approach this.
I think we just make a motion to have a voluntary community contact list, and then people can.
Dan has most of the information already.
I'm sorry, can you move the phone closer to who's talking? Thank you.
Dan has specifically been asked
Miles, you can't hear.
if people want to participate in that process. I think maybe it was the Historical Society who asked him to do that. And I know he got pushback from the community on that. I would not, I don't want to endorse the idea of data gathering, because Big Brother's always data gathering. I know from a school perspective that when my kids were at school, we couldn't get the parents, for public schools, they would not give personal information out of parents. I know that Patty's schools, Westwood, Mass, they always have a school directory. So it's just a matter of community participation and perception. I don't know if I want to be saying that I'm in favor of A or B. That's what I would say.
Is it as simple as in the next utility letter, we can just put something in there that says if you want to be included in this, you know, send information, because he's putting something together that's 100% voluntary?
If the community wants it, I'm saying I wouldn't be in favor of advocating one way or another. I think that's a private and personal concern, whether they want their information out there.
Miles, I suggest perhaps you have a conversation with Dan and see what he thinks on this. And it may be that Dan could put out a questionnaire to people saying, would you want to have such a thing? And to ascertain first if there's interest.
I just wanted to make sure that it was okay to go that far.
Yeah, it's okay with me for
As
you
a
to do
private
that.
citizen, you can.
Anything else? Before we move to executive session?
Executive session,
Second on moving to executive session? Mike Leonard
11:02.
at 11:02.